Our next guest has written for so many important publications in Canada, and his publishing company has been a beacon for quality Canadian writing. He was the editor-in-chief of our Vancouver magazine, and currently he's the editor for that vital Canadian magazine, Walrus. He has been attracting a lot of attention with his ideas for good writing and clear thinking that collectively are known as Ross Rules. Tonight, he gives us his extremely abridged version from his lifetime of learning, a special for the public salon. So listen up and welcome Gary Stephen Ross.
My father was a very well-read, articulate union organizer, and when his union cronies came around, our house was a cacophony of cursing, and I was a quick study. And by the time I was 12, I swore like a drunken stevedore, much to the chagrin of my poor mother, who, while other mums were telling their kids, pick up your clothes or eat your vegetables, my mum was saying to me, Gary, watch your language. I've made a career out of watching my language and other people's. I've been a writer and editor all my professional life. I've been magazine editor. I write for magazines. I've written books. I've been a screenwriter, a copywriter, a ghostwriter, been every kind of writer. And in recent years, I have spent a lot of time in corporate settings as a consultant, a branding and media and communications consultant, and been struck, I must say, by how much really shitty communication takes place in organizations. Long-winded briefs and useless email and unclear directives, and these are smart people communicating bad information. I was curious why that was going on, so I began to research the science behind reading and writing, how we process language. So I spent the last couple of years doing that, and I wanted to share with you tonight a few of the things I have learned. One of the things I've learned is that most people write the way they brush their teeth. They just do it. They don't think about it. They just write. This is what I write now. They don't inhabit the process of writing. There are about 1 million words in the English language, and if you are a typical college graduate, you use about 10,000 of them, 1%. People say and write the same things over and over again, the way they brush their teeth. And a really interesting way of making yourself inhabit the activity of writing is to develop a list of the 10 or 12 words that you use all the time without thinking when you write. And those words, depending on where you work, might be words like challenge, opportunity, exciting, great, terrific, words that just come out of you without your thinking about it. If you make a list of 10 or 12 of those words and then challenge yourself for a week not to use them, you will find it an incredibly frustrating but educational experience. It makes you inhabit the process of writing, and it makes you seek alternatives, and it broadens your vocabulary, and it allows you to communicate more effectively. I learned why concision is so important in writing. I always knew this as an editor. You're always trying to make things shorter, but I never really thought about why that is. The answer is very simple. The more concise your communication, the more likely it's going to get read, understood, and acted upon. Imagine the manager of the munitions factory in the Second World War saying, now, how am I going to tell people, don't talk about what you do in this factory, don't talk about it to anybody, because what could happen is that word gets out and the word gets into the wrong hands and the enemy could possess knowledge that would ultimately be harmful to the war effort. Now, how do I communicate that succinctly? Bang! Unforgettable, the power of concision. There you have it. The more succinct your communication, the more likely it will be read in this iPhone age, to begin with, understood, and acted upon. It was Shakespeare who told us in 1602, brevity is the soul of wit, and Shakespeare did not have an overflowing inbox and a vibrating iPhone. It's more true today than ever, in other words. I understood that a lot of misunderstanding enters as a result of incoherence. Good writing is clear thinking on the page. When you read a sentence, you expect it to bear a relationship to the preceding sentence. If it doesn't, it's incoherent, and that opens the door to misunderstanding, miscommunication. This is why it's really important when you write to link sentences together, and this is where coherence connectives come in. And by coherence connectives, I mean words and phrases like moreover, however, on the other hand, therefore. These are like the couplings on boxcars. They lock the sentences together. The next sentence needs to be locked to the preceding sentence. That's how we're programmed to read. So the thrust of your argument is the locomotive, and then these linked boxcars become the train of thought. Coherence is incredibly important, and when you violate coherence, you risk miscommunication, losing your reader. Collaboration, I have always understood in my business, is a key to writing. When I read a great piece in the Walrus or the New Yorker, I know that that is not just the byline I'm reading, that's a collaboration among 6 or 7 people. There's a commissioning editor, the magazine has other editors who look at the piece, comment on it. There's a copy editor, there's a fact checker. Half a dozen people have contributed to what looks to the typical reader as just a nice piece by the byline writer. I've worked with many of the best writers around. People who have won everything from the Nobel Prize and the Man Booker Prize and the Governor General's Award on down. And what they have in common is that they not only welcome editing, they seek it out. When Margaret Atwood submits her manuscript, her new novel, to the publisher, she doesn't say, "Here you go, now make us all rich." She convenes her 3 editors, principal editors, in New York, Toronto, and London, and they sit for a few days in a hotel and talk about, down to the finest granular level, how to make the book better. In organizations, I find, people invest their ego in what they write. And it's very difficult sometimes for junior people. When I do a presentation, sometimes the receptionist will come up and say, how would you deal with this? Suppose you had a boss who was really great but a shitty writer, and you send out the stuff, and it's shitty. Told you, raised on profanity. How would you deal with that? And I said, you need to create a culture where you understand that writing is collaborative, and to criticize or to comment on someone's writing is not to attack them personally. So I said, you need a sort of cultural reset here, is my reaction to that. It's very difficult to edit yourself. The reason it's difficult to edit yourself is we see what we expect. And when you write something, you know what's coming. Lots of people look at the words on that screen, and it takes them a very long time to see that it says, "I love Paris in the springtime." We see what we expect. You need an outside set of eyes. Why do you need an outside set of eyes? Whoever works in the Prime Minister's office and thought, I'll just go ahead and get these printed up, that was probably a bad idea. I have taken what I have learned about how we read and write, how we process language, and developed a set of principles that I take into corporations aimed at helping people communicate more effectively. It begins, as I say, with inhabiting the process of writing. Not writing the way you brush your teeth, but being mindful as you write. So it begins, in other words, by doing what my mother told me to do, those 800 years ago: watch your language. I thank you for your time, and I would like to say to Sam Sullivan and Lynn Zanata, thank you so much for sponsoring this series, producing this series. It is a wonderful addition to the city. It makes Vancouver a more vibrant and stimulating and exciting place to live. Thank you so much for your time.